The scene opens on the vast, shimmering expanse of the South China Sea. Imagine the deep blue waters stretching to an endless horizon, a place of incredible beauty and immense strategic importance. Beneath these waves, vital shipping lanes connecting east and west. They carry trillions in global trade each year. Below the seabed, whispers of untapped oil and gas reserves. This is economic lifeblood for much of the world, a stage where nations project power. But the picture is deceptive. Look closer. Sharp gray silhouettes of Coast Guard vessels on the horizon. Small wooden fishing boats dwarfed by steel giants. Water cannons blasting. Radio warnings crackling. Tense sailors shouting across the waves. The front line of a 21st century territorial dispute. The Philippines standing in defiance of China's superpower ambitions. A David and Goliath narrative on the high seas. This isn't just a distant chess game. The standoff reaches beyond Manila and Beijing, Washington, Tokyo, Canberra, Brussels. The stability of the Indo-Pacific and the global order hangs in the balance. What happens here does not stay here. It sends ripples across the globe, supply chains, international law, national sovereignty. Tonight we go deep into this conflict. We'll peel back propaganda and nationalistic rhetoric, we'll examine the history, analyze present-day confrontations, listen to the voices caught in the middle. We'll show the hard facts, timelines, and legal arguments, the untold story of the Philippines versus China, territorial rights, economic survival, a nation's fight against overwhelming odds. The stakes could not be higher. To understand the tension today, we must look back through the pages of history. For centuries, the waters now known as the South China Sea were a common space. Fishermen from various coastal communities, including those from the Philippine archipelago, sailed these seas. They followed the fish, guided by the stars, guided by the seasons. There were no dotted lines on ancient maps claiming vast swaths of open ocean. Islands and shoals, Scarborough Shoal, known locally as Panatag Shoal, were traditional fishing grounds used by Filipinos for generations. The modern dispute began to take shape in the mid-20th century. After World War II, new nations emerged. Old empires' crumbled maritime boundaries became more formalized. In 1947, the then Republic of China published a map showing an 11-U-shaped line encompassing most of the South China Sea. That line was later adopted by the People's Republic of China and modified to the 9-line we know today. The claim was sweeping and, to its neighbors, alarming. It staked nearly 90% of the sea, overlapping with the legitimate maritime zones of several Southeast Asian nations. The Philippines formalized its own claims based on geography and international law. In the 1970s, Thomas Cloma claimed a group of islands he named Calayan, or Freedom Land, which were later incorporated as part of the Philippine province of Palawan. This was based on the idea of terra nullius, land belonging to no one. The Philippines' position has always been grounded in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, the treaty that defines the rights and responsibilities of nations with respect to their use of the world's oceans. This set the stage for a slow-motion collision course. For decades, the dispute simmered. China was focused on its internal development, and the Philippines dealt with its own domestic challenges. The competing claims were lines on maps, rarely enforced with military might. There were occasional diplomatic protests and minor incidents, but the region remained relatively calm. Fishermen continued their work, albeit with a growing sense of uncertainty. This fragile status quo, however, was not destined to last. As China's economic power grew, and its military power grew, so too did its assertiveness in the South China Sea, turning a simmering disagreement into a boiling point of international concern. At the very core of this entire conflict is a single controversial feature on a map, the 9-line. This demarcation is China's historical claim, a U-shaped loop. It stretches over 2,000 kilometers from its southern coast. It carves out a vast territory, swallowing up islands, reefs, and waters that are hundreds of miles away from the Chinese mainland.
Beijing says the claim is based on centuries of historical usage by Chinese sailors and fishermen. They point to ancient texts and maps as evidence. They assert the South China Sea has been part of their blue national soil since ancient times.
A claim highly contested by historians and legal experts alike. This 9-line directly clashes with modern international law, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. Both China and the Philippines have ratified UNCLOS. UNCLOS, finalized in 1982, establishes a legal framework. It grants coastal states an exclusive economic zone, 200 nautical miles, about 370 kilometers from their coastlines. Within this zone, a country has exclusive rights to marine resources: fish, oil, and gas.
China's 9-line slices deep into the legally recognized EEZs of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. China's actions go beyond drawing lines on a map. In recent years, Beijing launched a massive island-building campaign, dredging sand from the ocean floor to turn submerged reefs and low-tide elevations into artificial islands. New islands in the Spratly Archipelago have been fortified with military-grade infrastructure, long runways capable of handling bombers, advanced radar systems, naval harbors, surface-to-air missile emplacements. These activities have changed the physical landscape and military balance. Once pristine marine ecosystems turned into heavily militarized outposts. This posture is driven by multiple factors. Economically, the South China Sea holds huge resources, significant reserves of oil and natural gas, vital for China's economy. Strategically, control gives Beijing military reach and secures trade routes, allowing it to project power far beyond its shores and secure its vital trade routes. Politically, asserting the 9-line expresses national pride and ties into Xi Jinping's Chinese dream. For China, this is about more than territory. It's about reshaping regional power and reclaiming a perceived historical destiny. Faced with China's increasing assertiveness, the Philippines decided to fight back, not with warships, but with lawyers. In 2013, under President Benigno Aquino III, the Philippines took an unprecedented step. It initiated arbitration proceedings against China under UNCLOS. The case was brought before the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. The Philippines did not ask the tribunal to rule on who owned the disputed islands. Instead, it asked for a clarification of maritime entitlements under international law. It argued that China's 9-line had no legal basis, and that many of the features China claimed were not islands not entitled to their own maritime zones. On July 12, 2016, the arbitral tribunal delivered a sweeping and unambiguous victory for the Philippines. The 5-judge panel ruled decisively there was no legal basis for China to claim historic rights within its 9-line. The ruling was a landmark moment in international law. It clarified that features like Mischief Reef Second Thomas Shoal are within the Philippines' EEZ. It condemned China's large-scale land reclamation and construction of artificial islands, stating that these actions had caused severe harm to the coral reef environment. It was a powerful legal affirmation of the Philippines' rights in its own backyard. China's reaction was swift and defiant. Even before the ruling was announced, Beijing declared that it would not accept, would not recognize, would not participate in the arbitration.
They called the process a political farce, a law-abusing tribunal. After the verdict, the Chinese government dismissed it as a piece of paper that is destined to come to naught.
President Xi Jinping stated firmly, China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights in the South China Sea will not be affected by the so-called Philippines South China Sea ruling in any way.
China simply ignored the ruling and in many ways accelerated its activities in the disputed waters. This created a complicated situation for the Philippines. The subsequent administration of President Rodrigo Duterte chose to downplay the legal victory. In a pivot towards Beijing, he set aside the ruling in pursuit of Chinese investments and loans.
I will not impose anything on China, Duterte said in 2016.
This policy of appeasement caused deep divisions within the Philippines. While the arbitral award remains a valid and binding piece of international law, its non-enforcement by China, its temporary shelving by the Philippines, left the landmark decision in a state of suspended animation, a powerful legal tool left sitting in the toolbox. In the years following the Hague ruling, and especially under the current administration of President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., the situation has escalated dramatically. The Philippines has adopted a new strategy of assertive transparency. It involves embedding journalists on patrol vessels, publicly releasing high-quality video and photographic evidence of China's aggressive actions. This has turned the West Philippine Sea, the part of the South China Sea within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, into a global media flashpoint. The world is now seeing in near real time what Filipino sailors and fishermen have been facing for years. We see the David and Goliath confrontations playing out on our screens. The incidents have become alarmingly frequent and dangerous. Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels routinely engage in what the Philippines calls dangerous maneuvers. They block Philippine supply missions to the BRP Sierra Madre, a marooned World War II-era ship that serves as a makeshift military outpost on 2nd Thomas Shoal, also known as Ayungin Shoal. One of the most common tactics is the use of powerful water cannons. In March 2024, a Chinese vessel fired water cannons at a Philippine supply boat, shattering its windshield and injuring several Filipino crew members. These actions are designed to intimidate and disrupt, stopping just short of an act of war. The language from leaders has become increasingly sharp.
Philippine President Marcos Jr. has been resolute. Following one incident, he warned, "We seek no conflict with any nation, but we will not be cowed into silence, submission, or subservience."
His defense secretary, Gilberto Teodoro Jr., has labeled China's actions as patently illegal and downright uncivilized.
In response, China's foreign ministry spokesperson, Wang Wenbin, has repeatedly stated that the responsibility for the recent situation at sea rests entirely with the Philippines, accusing Manila of infringing on China's indisputable sovereignty.
The dispute in the West Philippine Sea is not an abstract foreign policy issue. It has profound and tangible effects on the Philippines. Politically, it has become a defining national security challenge. The constant pressure from China has forced Manila to reevaluate its foreign policy, moving away from the previous administration's pro-Beijing stance and dramatically strengthening its alliance with the United States. This pivot is visible in the expansion of the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, which now grants United States forces access to several new strategic bases in the Philippines, some of which face the South China Sea. This has re-energized the decades-old alliance but also risks pulling the Philippines deeper into the broader United States-China rivalry. Economically, the costs are significant and honestly, growing. The most direct impact is on the fishing industry. According to the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the Philippines loses an estimated $628 million annually in fish catch from the West Philippine Sea due to Chinese activities. This affects the livelihoods of over 600,000 Filipino fishermen. Beyond fishing, the dispute casts a shadow over the Philippines' energy security. The Reed Bank, located entirely within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, is believed to hold substantial reserves of natural gas. However, exploration efforts have been stalled for years due to Chinese intimidation, preventing the Philippines from tapping into a vital domestic energy source that could lower electricity costs for millions. On a social level, the conflict has ignited a powerful wave of patriotism and nationalism among Filipinos. The slogan, "Atin ang West Philippine Sea," or "The West Philippine Sea is ours," has become a popular rallying cry. Public sentiment has turned sharply against China. Recent surveys consistently show that a vast majority of Filipinos distrust China and support a more assertive government approach to defending the country's maritime rights. This public pressure makes it politically costly for any leader to appear weak on the issue, creating a domestic imperative to stand firm against Chinese encroachment, which in turn fuels the cycle of diplomatic and maritime tension. The dispute also has a very real human cost.
For the fishermen of Zambales and Palawan, it's a daily struggle for survival. They speak of dwindling catches as they are forced to fish in less abundant near-shore waters.
They live with the constant fear of being harassed or having their boats damaged by larger, more powerful Chinese vessels. Their stories are a poignant reminder that this international conflict is not just about maps and legal treaties. It's about food on the table, the safety of loved ones, and the right to earn a living in waters that their ancestors have plied for generations. Their plight is really the human face of a geopolitical standoff. When you listen to experts on international relations and maritime law, you hear a complex mix of concern and cautious optimism. Many analysts believe that the Philippines' strategy of assertive transparency is its most effective tool. By publicizing China's aggression, Manila is winning the narrative war and galvanizing international support. International pressure, combined with stronger alliances, is the only viable way to raise the costs for Beijing's coercive behavior. However, other experts warn of significant risks. As the Philippines becomes more assertive, and as its alliance with the United States becomes more operational, the chances of a miscalculation increase. An accidental collision or an escalation during a standoff could quickly spiral out of control. Many experts emphasize the importance of multilateralism. They propose that ASEAN must play a more central role. While ASEAN has been slow and divided, a unified bloc speaking with one voice would have far more leverage. Negotiations for a code of conduct in the South China Sea are a potential, albeit long-delayed, path to manage the dispute and prevent armed conflict. While the dispute may seem like a regional affair between two nations, its global significance cannot be overstated. The South China Sea is one of the world's most critical maritime arteries. Over one-third of global shipping, amounting to an estimated $3.4 trillion in trade, passes through these waters each year. Any disruption would send shockwaves through the global economy, leading to supply chain chaos, soaring energy prices, and potentially a worldwide recession. The conflict is also a crucial test case for the future of international law. If a powerful nation like China can unilaterally reject an international tribunal's ruling and impose its own claims through force, it undermines the entire rules-based international order. Furthermore, this standoff is a central theater in the escalating strategic competition between the United States and China. The South China Sea has become a barometer of American credibility and resolve among its allies in the region and around the world. For nations across the globe, the outcome of this dispute will set a powerful precedent. The struggle of the Filipino people to defend their sovereign rights is, in a larger sense, a struggle to defend a global system where rules, not brute force, govern the interactions between states. That is why the world is, and must continue to be, watching